Morning, everyone. Welcome back to Biblio Fitness. Hope everyone's had a great day. Made some glorious gains because I know I did. I got a perfect score on my logbook today. You already know it's always going to be a great day when you got a perfect score. So today I finished Brothers Karamazov. I finished it on Sunday. Honestly, just been taking these past couple days just to really sink in the very end. Like, Dostoevsky doesn't let the foot off the gas. If anything, he expounds upon he expounds upon his literary genius. Like, he accentuates it more. The courtroom and the trial and all that shit, the conversations, the back and forth, how he nitpicks that same trial himself. From the defense and from the prosecution, and it's so astounding, the scenes, all this pent up energy against against Dmitri in the town. Everything is really everything just like sinks in and takes place in this courtroom. And Smirnikov pulls it off. Spoiler alert. Yes, Dmitri gets convicted. If I do a play-by-play, we're gonna be here forever. I'm just gonna go off on a tangent, and but yes, Vertikov does pull it off. But what's extreme, like I said, the defense and the prosecution, they both make extremely great points. But the prosecution was a little bit too psychological. It was looking too much at behavior and not understanding that the human can change, and like how. There's two extremes that could be possible at the same time within a human being. That is dualism. That is the duality of mankind, and the human condition is we could be two polar opposite. We could be we are walking contradictions, right? We can be brave and noble, but at the same time participate in what some may consider depravity, and society would not appreciate some of the activities and stuff like that, would look down upon some of your activities. And that is the personification of Dmitri himself. And so the prosecution really does give a play-by-play. He does like this whole chronological sequence of events that transpired. But there was a lot of holes. Like, he was assuming behaviors. There was a lot of assuming, knowing Dmitri, there's no way. Like, when he talked about the amulet, there's no way that a guy like him will carry around all that money, because then he'll just start opening up and taking 100 this day and 100 another day and another day, and by the end of the month he'll be gone. He'll have no more money. You're meaning to tell me that this guy that blew all this money and just known to be a swindler, known to be a guy that really doesn't respect money, to hold that in his chest, it's highly unlikely situations, and anybody would fall for that. We have the advantage of the narrator pointing those sort of things out, and us, being able to actually know what transpired. But if you were an unbiased human being, if you weren't given a play-by-play, these sort of assumptions are extremely valid. That's the whole point of psychoanalysis and stuff like that. So he does make valid points, but then here come, and he talks about, the brass pedal, and, he saw that as a weapon because he knew that he was going to go over there and he was going to kill him. That's why he grabbed that as a weapon, and he came down and he killed his father in cold blood. And when he got Grigory, he didn't do it out of pity. He did it just to see if he was alive or not. There was a lot of points, but they were all extremely flawed. Because then I love the defendant. I forgot the name of the guy, and I don't want to even attempt to mispronounce that very confusing name. And he talks about how psychology is a stick with two ends. Like, you can go one way, but then it could come back at you from the other end. Like, it'll come back to bite. I guess that's what it means. Is that you could psychoanalyze anything to your advantage, and how he really starts talking about the behavior of Dmitri. The prosecutor even they talk about there's just a lot of courtroom drama. When Ivan comes in, I don't even know how to really say this properly, but Um, I know, like, during the whole trial, there's just so much to oh my God, like, I feel like there's so many amazing moments in that fucking trial. There's so many amazing turn of events and hysteria and emotions, and man, I don't know if I could do it justice the way it should, but you know what, right, we'll come and try. So yeah, the because during the trial, when they were calling the witnesses, Ivan finally came out, but this guy has completely succumbed to the brain fever. He's really going through it, and he's basically about to have a complete mental breakdown. And I feel like that. I'm like, now that I think about it, I feel like it's kind of like a jab at Nietzsche, a new man, a man that doesn't see the use and the validity of God, and now is trying to create something for himself, and he just can't handle it. Like, because that's what happens with Nietzsche at the end. He has a complete mental breakdown. He goes insane, and then he dies a year later. Um, that's just my take. And these guys were, uh, honestly, one did. I might be talking shit, but it just, like, the similarities just became apparent to me. So, but yeah, he comes in, and it seems like he's still very conflicted. Like, he hasn't really made the choice, like, really, like, genuinely made that choice, and like to go to court and tell everybody what really happened, and the conversation in its entirety between him and Smerdyakov, and what Smerdyakov told him the day before. And he even brings in the 3,000 rubles that Smerdyakov took for himself. But you know he's still conflicted. He's still back and forth the way he's behaving, and he's very erratic. And at the very end, they had to take him out, but he does say, like, it was me, and I did it with Ivan. I mean, with Smerdyakov. Smerdyakov was my minion. I had look at all this money. Like, he's really starting to say it, but then he starts talking about, oh yeah, they asked him, do you have any witnesses? Do you have any other, like, evidence? He's like, oh yeah, the devil. He's probably hiding on one of the benches with all the evidence and stuff like that. Like, he just seems very erratic, very, he just seems very ill. And they have to even drag him out, and that's when Katya really kind of like puts the nail on the coffin in terms of Mitya's defense, and that's when she shows the letter to the court of Mitya's drunken confession, as the prosecution would use it as, when Mitya was drunk in the tavern 2 days before. I think it was the Metropolis. Yeah, it was Metropolis. And he got like a piece of paper, and he just started blaring out, like, that he's gonna try to get that 3,000 and vindicate himself, like he's a scoundrel but not a thief, and he's gonna try to get that money within these next days. If not, I'm going to my father, I'm going to kill him, and all this other stuff. I'm gonna get what's mine. I'm obviously completely paraphrasing, but that's the point of the message. It's like him basically convicting himself. Like, he's just snitched on himself. He just literally said it, and that's how the prosecution is going to use that evidence. Like, look, see, he clearly had this premeditated. He was talking about this. But the beauty of the defense was that he's really, like I said, like, he really started talking about, the stick, psychology is a stick with two ends. And then he starts nitpicking every single one, because during the testimonials, while the witnesses were getting interrogated, he started asking every single one of them if they ever saw an envelope, if they ever saw the envelope with the money. Like, he was very insistent in asking everyone that question. Everyone was very curious, like, how is he going to use this? Because everyone assumes that this is just a mere formality. That this is hook, line, and sinker. Like, this is done. Like, it's not. Like, not many people have any doubt whatsoever that Mitya is the one responsible for the death of the father. And the reason that Ivan's testimony gets kind of messed up is because that Smerdyakov ends up committing suicide. He writes like a suicide note, and he wrote, by my own will, I extinguished my life, so as to not bother anyone else. I'm sure I didn't get the complete wording correct, but he commits suicide, and that's also in itself a very interesting point. He committed the murder. He was very opportunistic. He took advantage of a potential situation, and he didn't benefit from it. Someone died, and someone else is about to go to jail for your crime, and at the end of the day, you weren't able to revel in victory. You weren't able to attain your goal because he was going to use that money to go to France, go travel, learn, get away from Russia. He despises Russia, but he gets sick, and I guess that's why he gave him the 3,000. Like when he gave Ivan the 3,000 in their last meeting, I feel like he knew that he wasn't long for this world, and he wasn't really going to be able to enjoy the fruits of the fruit of his endeavor. And so that really does put a nail on the coffin of Smernikov, because the prosecutor makes Smernikov out to be some fool, an idiot, a guy that was way over his head with philosophical notions because of Ivan, distorted worldview. But then the defense comes in, and at first he says there's no robbery, like it wasn't him, that he didn't rob anything. Because he starts talking about how foolish it is to leave a paper torn there. Like what sort of imbecile, like fucking, would look at that, would grab a paper and tear it up and leave it. And then on the top of the fact that the defense is like, but when you guys looked at the bed, it's on the record that there's no sign of anybody moving anything. Dmitri and his bloodied hands, he would have left marks all over the place. Obviously, he would have left handprints, but there was no handprints. So that means that no one lifted the mattress, and and how did the letter get there? And in his defense is maybe it was Fyodor himself. Maybe he's the one that maybe he didn't tell Smernikov anything. He might have changed locations. He might have taken it out of the box and put it somewhere else. And he might have taken it out of the mattress and put it in the box, or whatever the case may be, without informing Smernikov, because he doesn't have to let him know. Or that night he was just, he's like, why do I need to show her a letter? I'm just going to have the money on. He tears it and he leaves it there in an imperious manner because he's the owner, and he doesn't, he's not going to think about this. It's my property. I could leave it there torn if I want to, in my eccentricity, because, who's going to think that this is going to be used as evidence against anybody? And that is what he said, because he says no one knows about anything. And then he goes on to defend Dmitri in the fact of the 1,500, because they only found 1,500 in total when they did the accounting, when they first arrested him back in Mokroy. And they could only account for 1,500. And then the defense goes on to say, oh, the 1,500 must be buried somewhere. He must have buried it somewhere in Mokroy. That's why we can't find it. There's no way it could have been the amulet. No one believes that. But then, the defense lawyer goes on to, point out the fact that after he supposedly kills him, his father and hits Grigory, when he gets to Peter Petrokhin, he's constantly surrounded by people the whole time. So where was he going to get the time to hide away from someone and hide the money? Your analysis doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. And then he goes on to talk about how Dmitri, when the prosecutor said that Dmitri cannot possibly, jump back down and check on Grigory out of a sense of pity. And the defense lawyer goes on to criticize this as well. He's like, look, you mean to tell me that this guy who just killed his father in cold blood, took money, is going to bang on this guy's head? And he jumped down because he wanted to see if he was dead or not. If he really was as cold-blooded as you say he is, wouldn't he have just bashed his head like 3 more times to make sure he was dead? And he's like, you know what? The reason he goes on to check him is because his heart is still pure. He didn't kill his father, which we'll get to after. He didn't kill his father. That's the only reason he went down, because he had a pure conscience. He didn't have that guilt and that shame in him. He would have run away. And he no one knows about the letter. No one knew about the letter. And he goes out to give an example that he was going in Petersburg, like some guy, like a panhandler kid, goes into a shop and just, with an axe, and just caves in this guy's head. And a few hours later, they find him. The police find him, and he only spent like 15 rubles. But the thing is that with the money, the shop clerk manager or whatever was able to account, okay, this is how many 100 ruble bills we had, and 50 ruble bills we had, and kopecks, and blah, 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 blah. That's evidence. He goes on to say, no one has ever seen this letter. It's all hearsay. So the fact that it's torn doesn't automatically mean that it was Dmitri. And like, oh, he's not a natural thief, so he would never think about this. And that's when he goes on to say, hey, like, I don't even think he was the fucking murderer. I think he did leave. And he goes on to say, because he goes talking about, he attacks the defense, the prosecution's analysis of Smernikov. And he talks about how he got a completely different impression from Smernikov when he was interrogating him before this whole trial. Because, how the prosecutor talks about how he's a fool and he doesn't really know and he's naive and this and that. The defense lawyer goes on, he's like, dude, I got a completely different vibe from him. I got a lot of contempt, a lot of envy, a lot of spite, a very proud and a very ambitious individual. And he's like, I would hear around town, I heard rumors that he gnashed his teeth whenever anyone brought about his upbringing, his origins, being the son of stinking Lizaveta, the homeless girl that apparently the rumor goes around that she got raped by Fyodor. Now he might be the bastard son of Fyodor. A man that hated Russia, everything about Russia, and he thought that the being enlightened and being part of the Enlightenment movement was having clean clothes and shining shoes and stuff like that. A man that was very, very against the nature of Russia herself. He wanted to leave. A man that was very envious, spiteful, because he's the bastard son of Fyodor and he's not going to be able to get a share of the money. So the fact that the prosecutor's talking about like there's no reason for him to do it. And the prosecutor does talk about at that moment, like, oh, you guys are saying that it's Smernikov because Smernikov is the only other person. It's either Dmitri or Smernikov, but the process of elimination. And, how could he have done it? Why would he have a falling fit and put himself behind Grigory? Why would he put more attention to himself by doing the falling, by having an epileptic seizure, by shamming one? Why would he do that when he slept in the kitchen, he was by himself and stuff like that? He's clearly not understanding genius. Like, Smernikov is kind of an intelligent guy. Like, he's leaving traces, he's eliminating any traces. Like, oh, where were you? You say you were in the kitchen, but like, what I'm saying? Like, Smernikov was very intelligent. He did think this through, a lot of one of the big problems was Marfa, swearing that she kept hearing this guy moaning all night. And that's where the defense also attacks. Is like, dude, like, that happens all the time. Like, I remember a woman that would, like, imagine a guy that every couple hours wakes up and hears a dog barking. He wakes up, gets mad, hears the dog barking, but then he goes back to sleep. And then a couple hours later, same thing. And then a couple hours later, same thing. But then when he wakes up in the morning, he's going to be complaining that someone kept him up all night because he kept waking up, but not, taking into account the intervals of time in between those when he did wake up. So the defense is really, really good. He talks about Smernikov. He talks about, this guy that he might have had the falling sickness, but he started waking up. How like people go into a very deep sleep after their epileptic fit, and he might have been waking up. When he heard the scream of Parasite, he was already like half asleep only. He was only half asleep at that point. He heard the scream and he immediately instinctively went out. And when he went out, he goes on and sees Grigory blood on the, he goes first to Fyodor because there's a big fuss. And, Fyodor tells him that this guy was here, that Dmitri was here. And he goes out to check on Grigory. When he checks on Grigory, he starts realizing, oh, shit, there's an opportunity here to get money and to set someone up to take the fall for me. And that's exactly what he does. And that's what this guy is saying. It's like it might have been Smernikov, because I don't think it was Dmitri. Dmitri would not have checked on Grigory like that. And knowing Dmitri, he probably would have shot himself if he had, like, look how you found him when you found him in the tavern in McCroy. The guy was really going through it and crying when he thought it was Grigory. Imagine if it was father, he probably wouldn't have lived himself. He probably wouldn't have waited for dawn. He would have killed himself. especially to find out that she wasn't even there. I mean, Grushenska, of course. So it's a great advantage, and that Smirnikov took part in, and he got away with it. At the end of the day, media does get convicted. They do have plans of his escape and stuff like that, but Fyodor doesn't give the finale on that. And I haven't really looked into it, and maybe he, added on to that in an interview or a letter or whatever. There's just many, many things to elaborate on in this fucking amazing, amazing book. I keep saying it all the time, but I highly recommend it to everybody. While I don't agree with it completely, I really don't. I feel like once you open Pandora's box, or once you take a bite out of the apple, there's no going back. In terms of finding religion to be the answer to nihilism, the Godhead, the ideal, in that sense, it's just not. It's not viable, especially for me. I can't do that. Once you really see religion and Christianity for what it is, you're not going to partake in any religion. I just don't want to end up having the same conclusions as most other people, and that's why Nietzsche talks about, you know, Christianity being a religion of nihilism. And the thing with that is that when God is dead, people are going to suppose that everything else is false. And that's when they're going to turn nihilistic, because the whole truth or chasing the truth is going to turn in on itself when they realize it's not the truth. So, I mean, that's obviously everything. That's just surface level shit. But speaking of Nietzsche, I am going to read Beyond Good and Evil next. I was going to do Crime and Punishment, but I feel like it makes sense in a way to do like a contrast, and I'm just a big fan of Nietzsche, and I feel like I'm ready to read him. I think I read Will to Power a little bit too soon. It's just information overload like a motherfucker, but I think at the same time I was probably overthinking it. It's just a lot of information, but I'm gonna go ahead and read Beyond Good and Evil, and I might do Crime and Punishment again. I'm still deciding on see how it goes. Do a contrast, because the thing with me is that I really want to dive into Nietzsche, but I don't want this channel to be another Nietzsche channel. That's my personal philosophy. That's something that I feel like I want to find and I want to use for myself. Kind of like he never finished his philosophy, but use that as groundworks to develop my own philosophy, because I really do. I felt a kinship to Nietzsche. When I read Will to Power, I just really felt like he was explaining and putting words to thoughts and feelings that I had that I wasn't able to really formulate in like with vocabulary. I just wasn't on that level. And I still remember to this day, like how my first time reading Will to Power, I just felt like, oh shit, I knew it. Like I felt like I knew these things, but I just wasn't ever able to put them on paper. Because I've always felt like there was something wrong with how everything works. How Christianity and religion, and how, it really, really fucks people up and they don't even notice it. I've clowned Christianity enough as it is. But, I mean, I'm not going to stop. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't... but yeah, I'm going to read Nietzsche, and... I want to read him, and I want to get inspired. I want to, draw from him many great things, because I feel like, if you're like me, then you feel like you kind of don't really belong. You go to a party, or you go to a club, or you hang out with people, and you feel like you're on a different wavelength. You feel like, you start seeing things very cynically, very critically, and, you feel like you're out of place. So, Nietzsche was out of place. He was in the mountains, and he only had 10 years of writing before the poor man had a complete breakdown. I'm a great man, and I can't wait to get my foot, So, my closing thoughts on, Brothers Karamazov, be that as it may, is that it's an amazing novel. It really does highlight and make obvious the genius and, you know, why Nietzsche, I mean, not Nietzsche, but why Dostoevsky really does deserve the praise that he continues to garner even here in 2023. He was an absolute genius, and, you know, respects to him and his work. You know, he's going to be remembered for a very long time. I don't think he's ever going to be forgotten, especially when you have people like Jordan Peterson and Lex Friedman, who have a big following that tend to really quote him quite a bit. So I'll leave you guys with that. I hope you all have an amazing day. And if you haven't made any gains, I hope you have glorious gains waiting for you later on in the day. Don't forget to make your gains. Don't forget to read. Don't forget to eat. You know, don't forget to reflect and have those weird conversations with yourself. You know, I honestly need to journal more. I'm being really lazy with the journaling. I'm gonna be honest with you. I need to start doing that more. Really, just start talking to myself in a literary sense, and start developing my skills as a writer as well. So, love you all, guys, and peace.